Hey everybody, it's Professor Snart checking in again just a day after our first announcement, or the day after the first day of classes. So I won't do these quite this often, like on a daily basis, but you know, they are fairly regular. But this is a more typical one where I'll be talking, but you can see our course here. So first of all, if you're just kind of getting into things, make sure that you back up and watch the very first video, kind of a little more comprehensive, a little more big picture. I will do a little quick orientation tour for our course here, although hopefully you're already kind of getting a sense of how it's set up, where to find things, how the pacing of the course works, what types of things we'll be doing as you look through that whole units list and that kind of stuff. So you'll also see our student homepage is showing up here. Okay, so syllabus, right, basic course policies, stuff like that, big umbrella issue type stuff. And then of course our textbook. The rules of creative writing is a narrated PowerPoint that we'll point back to as we get a little bit deeper into our course, but you can certainly take a look at it now. Also, same thing with how the workshops work. Our writing course is kind of grounded or anchored in a series of workshops that we do. And if you've never done a workshop before, what they are is an opportunity for us to get into groups, and I'll put people in groups based on our numbers as we move forward. And then everybody within that group will submit a piece of creative writing, whether we're doing the short story, the poetry, whatever, you know, section of the course we happen to be in. Everybody submits something. We use the discussion board feature, so you post your story or a link to your shared document if you want to use Google Docs. And then everybody in that group provides feedback on whatever, you know, each individual has contributed. So those are the anchor points for our course, and you can see if we look at our units list here. Once we get through our first, you know, just getting to know each other a little bit, we'll do some scaffolding stuff where we do sort of smaller writing assignments or think about particular elements of writing, and then do a workshop, and then maybe transition to write a new genre, do another workshop, transition, workshop, and then we're pretty much done. So we have a couple of those workshop anchor points as we go through our course. But there's some information that you can browse through now, but that will be important to look back on as we get closer to those actual workshops in this how the workshops work. As far as posting, providing feedback is really important, and I'll review this as we get closer to it. Grading, which everybody is concerned about. So generic stuff like that. You can look through now, but we'll attend to it more specifically once we get a little bit closer. It is important that you look at the note about feedback here. Haha, pretty funny, right? This is not feedback that you'd be providing to other people within the context of discussion boards or workshops or whatever, but really it's about the feedback that you'll get from me. And so there's a couple of reasons that I want to keep this, or that I do keep this relatively minimal on the major work that we're doing. So I'm not going to line edit or provide like 8 pages worth of commentary on your 4-page story. And so part of it is just time. Like, I want to get work back to you in a timely manner. And so because we move so quickly, because we have a number of people in the class, just practically, right, I can't do tons of that sort of commentary. But I also want you to understand that a lot of the grading in the course is not, especially for the workshops where you're writing a short story, writing a poem, whatever it happens to be, I'm not really grading you on the quality of the work, and I'm doing sort of the air quotes around that. So we don't want this to become a sort of subjective battle about I think it's a good story, or I think it's a bad story, you think it's a good one, or whatever. We're not really in this, and you know, people are at different levels. They have different levels of experience with writing in different genres. Some people are great with poetry, really comfortable, but never done a short story. The nature of our course is really just to encourage people wherever they're at, not hold them accountable to some mythical standard of writing the great next American novel or poetry collection or whatever it happens to be. So most of the grading part here is based on, did you do the work on time? Did you follow the basic guidelines for you know, again, whether it's posting on time or basic requirements? Is there, right, elements or evidence of effort on your part? So again, just like lack of typos or basic investment to provide us a complete thing to look at. Are you reflecting those rules of creative writing that we'll look at as we get a little bit deeper into the course? But long story short, there's not like a ton of feedback that I'll provide as a standard way of us doing the course. Most of the feedback that I want you to get on your writing is coming through the workshop. And so if I start providing a bunch of feedback, it sort of defeats that workshop peer review process. You know, it just sort of meddles there where it doesn't really belong. Now, having said that, anytime that you have questions, concerns, or want additional feedback, by all means reach out to me. I'm more than happy to do it. It's just not part of how the course is built. So it's good to understand that going in. And again, that's kind of big picture stuff. Textbook, grade breakdown, you can click on this My Grades to see how you're doing throughout the course, my contact info, right, the usual course kind of stuff. Our two primary menu links are going to be the units and the due dates here. I'll look at the due dates first. So due dates, clearly important. What is due when? So we also, we have a series of due dates, right? So you have to sort of keep your eye on not just what's right around the corner, but what's a little bit off on the horizon. Especially, again, because of our condensed format, for the fiction workshop, you'll be writing a short story, but it's not like you want to wait until Unit 4 is complete and then try to turn around really quickly and write a full-blown short story. So you have to sort of be aware of, right, the kind of scaffolding that we're doing, but also thinking towards those cornerstone workshop units that are coming up. Also notice, to give ourselves a little more flexibility deeper in the course, that units 2 and 3 are going to be due on the same day. So as soon as we wrap up unit number 1, you're turning around not just to the next unit, but to the next 2 units. Keep in mind that our discussion boards, which are going to feature in almost every unit that we do, I think, have a dual due date system. So there's initial posts or kind of main work is always due by noon on the due date, whether it's like June 1st, our first due date, or the 5th, our second and third here units due. And then replies for those discussion boards are due by the end of that day, so literally like 11:59 and COD time, Central's time. But there's nothing to say that you have to wait until like this noon date passes to do the replies. If there's enough folks who've posted right on time or even a little bit early, you can always wrap up replies earlier than having to wait till the end of the day. So you can, I wouldn't say work ahead, but it's not like you always have to be bumping right up against either the noon or the end of the day due date for replies. In fact, you want to be a little bit careful about trying to get too far ahead, even though I know that can seem like an attractive thing to do. Because we have this reply component, I've seen it where students try to jump ahead. They'll do a post in here way ahead of the schedule and then forget the reply part. And so they lose a bunch of points, not because they're not doing well in the course or understanding material. They just like jumped ahead so far they sort of forgot one of the main requirements. That's why I say again, the grading for the course is really designed to be, are you doing the work like correctly, we'll say, following guidelines and requirements, but also is it just being done on time and with a clear investment of effort. So for example, if we get a little deeper into the course and you're always posting at 11:45, just right before that noon due date, and then your replies are like minutes apart from one another, I can't help but notice, because Blackboard timestamps all that stuff, kind of how you're interacting or how you're engaging with the course. So just be aware of your, again, time management, like what I talked about in that first video. So as far as due dates then, it's all laid out. And of course, for all of what you're supposed to be doing in the units, we go to the units link. One of my hopes is that the course is laid out in a way that's, even if it's new to you, it's fairly transparent. Like you can get it and get comfortable right away. So you're not trying to do the course, but also just trying to figure out the technology or the layout part. so you're feeling oriented and comfortable, and then you can really dive into what the course is actually about. Okay, so we're trying to get into our introductions unit. Again, the aim clearly just to introduce ourselves. It's really important per my first video that we have a sense of like we're in a class together, we kind of know each other. We're going to be sharing creative writing with each other and hoping for constructive feedback, so it's good to develop as much as we can a kind of, you know, if not personal relationship, then personable relationship, so it's not just a bunch of distant typers out there that we're interacting with. So a couple of different things that we're doing. And again, in every unit, you want to be careful that you don't just get one thing completed and then think that we're done, but kind of back your way out to the main unit page and see what other stuff is required of you. That's why, again, just doing stuff on time is like a really important component of what we're doing. So you're creating a home page. It kind of walks you through what we're doing. You're just introducing yourself. There's some questions you can answer, but again, give us a few paragraphs about yourself and make sure that you include a picture. And I want to show you one of my 2 least favorite buttons in Blackboard. So if we look at the journal page, first of all, to see other people's, you have to pull down this little thing and you can see a bunch of other people have already done them. Mine is blank so far because I'm a bad student. So I'll create my journal entry. And you give it your title, just follow the directions for all this part. But if your editing screen doesn't show like 2/3 of this stuff, including this really important insert image, which is what we want to do, we don't just want to attach it, make sure that you haven't clicked, or it's just by default clicked, this, one of my least favorite buttons, right, that takes away 2/3 of our editing options. I don't even know why you would like want that button. But if you're not seeing the stuff that you need to see in there, make sure you click it, and then you'll have a whole bunch more editing options to make your post all cool, and of course include your picture of yourself, so we get to kind of put a face to a name a little bit, right? We get a little more engaged with the course because we're more aware of other actual people doing the same thing. My other favorite or least favorite button is this one that you can barely even make appear. Hide the course menu. Like, that's like the burn your syllabus button. Like, why? I don't get it. So I'm going to cancel that. Okay, so back to our unit. So unit 1, pretty straightforward, introductions, not a whole ton of heavy lifting there. The other piece of it is introducing yourself again, but in the discussion board format, largely duplicating, asking a few separate questions here, but just to make sure everybody has the experience of using one of the basic tools that'll show up throughout our course, the discussion board. Maybe you've already done this a ton of times in Blackboard, maybe you kind of know the idea from other systems, or maybe you haven't done it at all, but we want to give everyone the opportunity to figure out how to get into it by clicking the title here, figuring out how to create a post, figuring out how to reply, just kind of getting used to, again, feeling comfortable in the course. So it feels like we're doing the same thing twice a little bit in our first unit, but there's specific reasons as to why. Okay. So just because we're going to turn this around pretty quickly, I'll take a quick peek into units 2 and 3. So a more typical unit for us here then. Sort of aims and objectives, some contact info for me. I'm kind of not using Skype anymore, so I'll delete that. Reading assignment from the Creative Writer's book. This one, it might look a little long, like 40 pages, but it reads very quickly. It's written well, not a surprise, but there's also lots of, you know, asides or visual stuff, and it's not super demanding, I don't think, but it is important contextual or sort of bigger picture framework stuff that we do want to be thinking about. Here I'm asking you to read through or like go through the rules of creative writing. Again, giving you some food for thought about what makes good writing versus bad. Some of it's a little bit counterintuitive, something maybe a little surprising to you. But that's the kind of stuff that I'd like to see reflected from the theory into the practice when we actually get to some of the actual writing assignments in our class. Not just the workshops, but some of the other stuff too. There's a quick quiz related to that, and then a couple of separate discussion boards, again just talking about writing generally, not specific to necessarily short stories or poems or anything like that. So again, a lot to do, so make sure you're managing your time, keeping in mind as well that we're not just working on Unit 2 here, but also working through Unit 3 as well. Again, a little bit more of a preparatory or bigger picture unit that we will hopefully get into soon. Okay, so another reading assignment. I know, again, it might look a little bit longer, but it reads quite quickly. Here we're looking at one of the most fundamental tools that we'll use as creative writers. It's called Analogic Language, or the language of analogy. Things like metaphor, or even more commonly simile, right? This thing is like or is as something else. So it's one of the ways that writers kind of make connections between things in the world, or open up the world to us seeing it in new ways. So it's a really, really important thing. So there's some video stuff here. The old Forrest Gump, life is like a box of chocolates. Great analogy, but it's become a little bit of a cliche, kind of hard to listen to with the accents maybe, I don't know. But another discussion board here that we'll use. So what you want to do here is find a metaphor or simile that that shows up in something that you're already kind of like reading, or music that you're listening to. So don't just Google like simile in literature. Don't let Google do that work for you. You want to be aware as a reader of how this is showing up in existing written work that you're kind of interacting with. Even if you pick up a favorite book and actively look through it, but don't just Google it and let Google give you some random thing. I mean, I'm sure it'll get it right, but it's not really yours. But what I want you to do is use this as much as you can, use this kind of formula to understand how effective analogic language or metaphor simile really works. It usually takes an abstract thing like life is like a concrete thing, or something we can kind of understand. So it makes the big ununderstandable thing much more comprehensible. That's why it's such a powerful tool in writing. So there's a lot of description, explanation here, but it's actually a relatively straightforward kind of assignment. Okay, all right, so let's get back to our due dates here, and that's where I'll leave off. So hopefully you're getting comfortable in the course, how things are laid out, expectations on you, what the course is all about. And now you really want to be conscious of, right, due dates, our double due date system for posts and replies, and then especially early on we have 2 and 3 due together. Gives us a little more wiggle room later in the course, especially as we get into our workshops and more of the meat of the class. Okay, so as always, if you have concerns, questions, see anything that isn't maybe working properly in our course, by all means, be in touch with me by email, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can.